Picture this: a charming London street, a gentleman in a bowler hat carrying flowers and chocolates, strolling towards what seems like a romantic rendezvous. But wait, he suddenly hurls a brick through a jeweller's window, snatches a handful of diamonds, and leaps into a waiting Citroën DS. Just as the trio of crooks think they've made a clean getaway, a fire engine speeds past, blocking the road. The police swoop in. Game over. This is the opening of Go to Blazes, 1962, a slick, colourful British crime comedy that takes the classic heist formula and sets it on fire, literally, featuring a cast of British greats like Dave King, Robert Morley, Daniel Massey, and a young Maggie Smith. This film is a hidden gem of 1960s British cinema, but why doesn't it get talked about more? And how did a film about crooks disguised as firefighters end up with some of the most hilarious set pieces of its time? Stick around, because we're diving into the story, the stars, the filming locations, and the reception of this criminally underrated caper. After being caught red-handed in their opening heist, our trio, Bernard, Dave King, Harry, Daniel Massey, and Alfie, Norman Rossington, find themselves in Wormwood Scrubs prison. But they don't spend their time behind bars sulking. No, they're planning their next big job. The problem? Getaway cars always get stuck in traffic. The solution? A fire engine. Nobody stops a fire engine. Once they're out of prison, they set their sights on acquiring one. But there's a hitch. Buying a brand new fire engine costs £5,000, and their criminal budget is, well, non-existent. Instead, they borrow a perfectly good one from a remote station, swapping it with a burnt-out wreck before torching the place to cover their tracks. Brilliant plan, right? Well, not exactly. Enter Arson Eddie, played by the inimitable Robert Morley, a man who sees fire not as a problem, but as a sacred art. Eddie is more interested in setting fires than putting them out, so he's of no use to our amateur firemen. But then they meet Withers, played by Dennis Price, a disgraced fire chief with a talent for arson and grand larceny. Withers agrees to train them in exchange for a cut of their next job. Meanwhile, romance enters the mix when Harry, mid-escape from a botched heist, ducks into a wedding dress shop owned by Chantal, played by none other than a young Maggie Smith. In classic screwball fashion, he charms her by pretending to be the son of Lady Hamilton, one of her wealthy clients. Their flirtation adds another layer of chaos to the already harebrained schemes. The grand plan? Stage a fire at Chantal's shop, which just happens to be next to a bank, allowing them to rob it unnoticed. But they're not the only ones thinking about insurance fraud. Chantal's boss, Madame Colette, Coral Brown, is hatching her own scheme to burn down the boutique for a cool £20,000 payout. As you can imagine, everything that can go wrong does. When the fire actually breaks out for real, the real fire brigade arrives. The crooks, still in their stolen uniforms, manage to escape with their loot hidden inside a fire hose. But in one final act of poetic justice, the gang is forced to put out a real fire, only for Alfie to connect the wrong hose, sending banknotes flying into the flames instead of water. Cue the police. Cue another ride to prison. And just as they sit in the police van, defeated once more, Bernard glances out the window, spots the Queen's limousine and muses. I've just had another idea for the perfect getaway vehicle. Go to Blazes was filmed largely in and around London, capturing the capital's early 60s charm. Key scenes were shot near Berkeley Square and Smithfield, adding a sense of authenticity to the gang's misadventures. The stolen fire engine? A classic 1930s model that looks both out of place and somehow perfect in the hands of these bumbling thieves. The film had a solid cast of British character actors, including Jean Le Mesurier in a minor role, and featured a screenplay full of quick wit and escalating absurdity. Dave King, known for his blend of comedy and charm, plays Bernard with the perfect balance of cocky confidence and complete incompetence. Meanwhile, Robert Morley's Arson Eddie steals every scene he's in, delivering lines with his signature mix of sophistication and lunacy. But what did audiences think? At the time of its release, Go to Blazes didn't set the box office on fire. It was well received by critics who appreciated its light-hearted, fast-paced storytelling, but it never reached the status of other British crime comedies like The Lavender Hill Mob or The Italian Job. Still, its sharp script and delightful performances have earned it a place in the hearts of classic British cinema fans. Looking back, it's easy to see why. The film is a masterclass in slapstick chaos, a comedy of errors where the criminals are just competent enough to be dangerous, but too incompetent to succeed. It's a love letter to London, to heist films, and, in its own way, to the noble fire engine. So, is Go to Blazes worth a watch? Absolutely. Whether you love crime comedies, British humour, or just want to see Maggie Smith before she became an Oscar-winning icon, this film delivers. And who knows, maybe Bernard's next getaway vehicle idea would have finally worked. But that, my friends, is a heist story for another day.
Yeah, that's my Harry. He told me he was in the foreign office. Look, he's a fireman.